determined man that cares about people and takes a stand. He is a father, musician, and teaches chess, as well as writes a Substack that will impress. Men like him will help us win this war. Where's all the others? We need many more. Help us grow this space. We are in a humanity race. Stop the shots before they hurt anymore. We are on a mission to settle this score. Come to our group every night. Engage, share, get in this fight. The injections have ruined so many lives. It's our duty to keep people alive. Help us grow this space. We are in a humanity race. Stop the shots before they hurt anymore. We are on a mission to settle this score. The commitment of Jeremiah and his co-host, along with all the people from coast to coast. We will not be quiet until we have won. These people are full of dedication. Help us grow this space. We are in a humanity race. Stop the shots before they hurt anymore. We are on a mission to settle the score. It's no doubt it's a spiritual war, and the people have risen up with a mighty roar. The injured advocates and experts are sick of the lies. Government and media don't care who dies, but stop the shots members have our own plan, led by a courageous, patriotic man. After many hours each night, we will land our plane, but they will be run over by Jeremiah's train. Help us grow this space. We are in a humanity race. Stop the shots before they hurt anymore. We are on a mission to settle the score.
Yes, welcome to the Bassline. Thanks so much to Cece Blakeman for that song. I'm so honored that she wrote that and described what we're doing over at Stop the Shots on X. But today we have a very special guest. James Roguski is a voice of reason. He is a researcher with particular insights into health and the pharmaceutical industrial complex. He's fascinating and insightful. It is my distinguished honor to introduce to the Bassline the lucid and compelling James Roguski. Welcome to the Bassline. How are you this morning, James?
Well, I'm doing great. Thank you very much for your kind words. The honor is mine to be here. I look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let me say I had heard the name James Roguski here and there. I don't remember where I first heard your name. And then I happened upon a Twitter space that featured you as a panelist, and I was very impressed by your knowledge and your insight and your clarity. And I was very honored when you joined us in our Stop the Shots group a few weeks ago by invitation of my friend and Bassline guest, Dr. James Thorpe. And yeah, I'm very excited for this interview because I've enjoyed listening to you speak every time I've heard you. So I would love for you to simply introduce our audience to your research. What kind of work have you been doing over the past several years?
Well, let me hit the rewind button a little bit, maybe half my life ago. I'm about a month away from turning 65 years old, and so somewhere around the time that, boy, this will be older than most viewers, probably listeners, probably. When Hillary Clinton was the first lady, she was tasked with overseeing an attempt to rework the health industry. And that was when my awakening really began. And so I realized that what we call health insurance is no such thing, and that entire system, we could talk for days about it. But I woke up and started really paying attention at that point in my life. So I was 30-some years old. I moved out to California in 1996, almost 30 years ago now, and ended up managing a couple of mom-and-pop herb and nutrition stores, homeopathic remedies and such. And I spent a good 15 years just, digging into the rabbit holes of natural health and healing. And I can luckily and proudly say that I have not been to a medical doctor since I was 19 years old. You couldn't pay me to go buy something at a pharmacy, and I'm talking all the way down to an aspirin or a Tylenol. I don't think that swallowing poison to modify your symptomology is a pathway to health. And so, somewhere 5 years into managing this couple of nutrition stores, I had one too many people tell me that I should write a book. So I've always given this book away. People can download the ebook for free. I think it's almost 20 years old now. I wrote Your Doctor is a Liar. And so you can go to yourdoctorisaliar.com and download the book. And it is essentially about a lie that's older than I am. It goes all the way back to the 1950s. If you ever hear the word cholesterol being spoken in a doctor's office, you're about to be lied to. And so we can go on from there with COVID and all of the things I've been doing since then. But that's how I got to where I am.
Fascinating. So we talk about COVID quite a bit on this program because of the events of the past 5 years. I wish we didn't have to, but it seems to me there's a lot of unresolved issues, even though many people would like to basically pretend that none of this ever happened and, deny, obfuscate, what have you. But I heard you in an interview recently refer to the horrors of the COVID injections. And many of us are very aware of these horrors. We obviously host the Stop the Shot space nightly on X, where any number of people have testified to their own personal injuries and tragedies around these shots. But a surprising number of people have been able to sequester themselves from the reality of the situation. If you were talking to someone who was fairly open-minded and they would hear what you have to say, but they're unaware of the injury that's been inflicted by these shots, how would you describe it?
I often try to take a different approach. So let me come at this from a slightly different viewpoint.
Sure.
Have you ever been run over by a bus?
Not recently. Maybe not ever.
Okay. Hopefully not ever. Okay. Could you even begin to describe the horror of literally being run over by a bus? Well, it kind of requires having had the experience to really be able to comprehend the horror. Okay? Now, I'm lucky. I, haven't been to a medical doctor since I was 19, so I haven't experienced the horrors of drugs and jabs and all that sort of many things. I can empathize with people who have, but in reality, until you get hit by a bus, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, a lot of people over the last 4 years plus have been hit by the COVID. I'm going to use a phrase that people may or may not be familiar with. The COVID countermeasure, biological weapons that have been used to harm people under the guise that they're trying to help. Now, I'm half my life into understanding the system, and the system is not designed to identify the cause of one's problems and get people to make the changes that are necessary to avoid whatever problems they may be having health-wise. The system is designed to poison people, to change their symptom pattern so that the problem they walked in with appears like it has gone away when it's really just been masked, and a new disease, an allopathic disease, a different disease with a different set of symptoms, ultimately crops up. They call it side effects or adverse events or whatever. And once you recognize the system and the pattern and the business model, you realize that all of the things that were touted to help people for quote-unquote COVID were not designed to do any such thing. Whether it is a well baby checkup or a yearly physical or some type of cancer screening or blood tests for sugar or cholesterol or blood pressure or any of those sort of things, whether it's a test or a drug or a jab, I have come to understand that those things are not healing to the person. They do not get rid of the cause of your problem. They actually are designed as customer acquisition tools. Oh, you got to come in for your checkup. You got to get a test. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to take this. If they can find a number on a test and use it to convince the quote-unquote patient, I don't like to use that word, but people are familiar with it, that, you have a dis-ease and you must swallow this poison every day for the rest of your life. What they've done is turned a healthy person or a person who could potentially easily regain their health with good advice into a lifelong customer that they refer to as a patient.
Right. I've experienced that firsthand. Unfortunately, I was, I think, wise enough to not be ensnared any further. I'll tell the story quickly because I've told it on the air before.
Yeah, no, please do. Yeah.
But basically, I went to the doctor and felt pretty good. I do martial arts. I'm stronger than the average man, not some world record holder or anything, but pretty fit, pretty strong, always been physical and active, not lethargic. And the doctor said, you're slightly anemic. He said, everything's good, you're healthy, but you're slightly anemic, and I'm concerned about that. Next thing I know, he's sending me to the oncologist, which I wasn't even familiar with that. I'm looking this up, saying, wait, oncologist is for cancer? What do you mean? Like, I'm slightly anemic. Don't I just eat some spinach or something? Then the oncologist sends me in to get a full body scan. At which point I'm drinking some toxic stuff that just didn't seem very natural. You drink it, you wait 30 minutes and drink another bottle of this gross stuff so they can help see your insides. And he runs a scan over me, and they go, I go to have a separate meeting with the doctor later after that to go over the results of this. And he said, you have no cancer, so that's good. But still wondering what's going on with this anemia. We're going to have to do a bone marrow biopsy.
Oh, my God.
At which point I'm thinking, hold on a second, partner. You're talking to a guy who considers himself to be the greatest professional fighter who never fought. I don't need some invasive procedure. I feel pretty good. Maybe I could be healthier in some measure or another. But then I'm reading about this bone marrow biopsy thing, and I'm like, that's an invasive procedure with a considerable side effect risk. I think it was something like 3% of people experience lasting effects. You didn't tell me about that, doctor. You were just very pleased to sort of usher me through the process. And at the beginning of all this, which I didn't mention, is I mentioned that I was diagnosed as slightly anemic, and he actually used the word slightly, which makes it even stranger to be so invasive. But So the doctor said I was slightly anemic, and my friend, who's not a medical professional or anything like that, just said, eat beets. So I started just conscientiously getting some beets from the salad bar, still have maintained that habit, beet juice, beet salad. Actually, my mother-in-law actually makes a phenomenal beet salad, I have to say, so I guess I'm kind of lucky about that. But I'm not anemic anymore. It's been confirmed on more than one blood test. I'm not anemic. How come these brilliant doctors didn't give me that advice that my friend gave me? But meanwhile, they want to poke me. They want to scan me. They want me ingesting toxic garbage to confirm that I don't have cancer, which I didn't feel like I had cancer or anything like that. So, that was my experience. And it definitely is eye-opening for me personally. And I think a good example of a lot of what goes on in this industry, where they're increasingly less interested in our well-being and more interested in just making a buck, basically, like you said, treating us as customers with very little regard for us as individuals and very little regard for our physical organisms. But all that being said, I would like to get into the strategic aspect of what we need to do nice and early in the show, rather than sort of saving it for the end. Oh, what do we do now? I've been very focused at this point, I must say, on what can we do to start spreading the word about this critical discussion that, for me, the first problem is that people are stonewalling the discussion. They're saying this is something we can't discuss, which is unacceptable to me. I mean, we discuss, we criticize everything, but when it comes to vaccines in particular, when it comes to the pharmaceutical industrial complex, there's a certain group of people in our society, unfortunately large group of people, who have turned it into almost a hip thing to have zero critique of the pharmaceutical industrial complex. And I'm trying to figure out, how do we break the spell? How do we crack the code and start getting this conversation on the table? What would you say, generally speaking, to the medical freedom fighters out there who are not particularly doctors or scientists, who aren't lawyers, who work in various aspects of life, and they simply do not want to be experimented on? They do not want their families being targeted by this predatory industry. What could you say to orient us towards being a part of, hopefully, some sort of change in our society, where we start realizing that we've been doing things wrong for quite some time?
There's so many things that are floating around in my mind right now. We're going to have to schedule another half a dozen interviews.
I'd love to.
now you said you wanted to get right down into what kind of action can people take, and I'm very much action oriented. I do not consider myself to be a journalist, because I write with an attitude. I write with an opinion, but I also write with, here's the problem, here's something that you can do. I always try, I maybe don't always succeed, but I always try, whenever I'm writing about anything, it's like, here's what the problem is, but here's something that you can do. And I'm going to probably surprise you with the thing that I think we all need to do. And I'm going to fess up right at the beginning that I haven't mastered what I'm about to say I think I need to do and everyone else needs to do. I haven't figured it out. If I ever do, I'll call you up and we'll talk about it. But I'll use experiences that I've had that will shed light on it. I told you I wrote a book entitled Your Doctor is a Liar. Okay, everybody can go to yourdoctorsliar.com and read the book for free. At the end of the book, I give my phone number. I'm going to give my phone number in a moment, so if people want to give me a call, they can write down my phone number. Don't call now. Obviously, we're on the radio. But at the end of the book, I put my phone number, and I figured if anybody got to the end of this book and they wanted to talk to me about what they had just read, more than happy to talk to them. So I've gotten many, many phone calls. My phone number is 310-619-3055. 310-619-3055. I've obviously had that number for at least 20 years. People call me all the time. We'll have a conversation. The book is about cholesterol. Cholesterol is a complete and total lie from the 1950s. We would have a conversation about all their issues and all that sort of thing. And then at the end of the conversation, they'd say, "Oh, James, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'll have to ask my doctor." And I can't tell you how many times I've allowed myself to fall into the trap of not realizing that I was having a conversation with that person's conscious mind, and I continually forget that their conscious mind doesn't rule them. It's their subconscious programming. Ask your doctor, ask your doctor, ask your doctor. That governs their action. And so I'm not a hypnotist. I'm not somebody who preys upon people's emotions. And I think that's, fear and triggering, people emotionally is something that I despise. But that is how the establishment coerces people. They trigger some type of deep-seated trauma or fear. They repeat the same thing over and over and over again. They wear a white coat and have a stethoscope around their neck, and people honor this authority figure as if they're anything other than a used car salesperson trying to sell you, their oncology, products or bone marrow, whatever. They get paid to do things to you, and they have to sell you on doing things to you. What we need to do on a human person-to-person basis is understand that there's only one disease. Okay? There's only one. My version of it is called James Roguski syndrome. Your version of it is, your name and the next person and the next person. I was born with it. It's terminal illness. Eventually it's going to get me. But so far I've been managing it pretty well. Flares up from time to time, has a lot of different aspects. If you understand that your medical practitioner, doctor, whatever, doesn't have an insurance code to get reimbursed for treating James Roguski syndrome. My name's not Alzheimer. My name's not Parkinson. My name's not Lou Gehrig. What happens when you go into that system is they run tests, they measure things, they observe things, they tell you a story, they change the names of the symptoms that you tell them you have into Latin so that you're all confused, just so that they can choose an international classification of disease code, an ICD-10 code, to get reimbursed from your insurance company and to be able to not, have to be creative, but to then just follow a protocol that is how they make money. Oh, I've changed your James Roguski syndrome into, ICD-10 code number, whatever it may be. That gives them justification in their evil system to abuse you with poisons and treatments and jabs and everything else under the sun. And the problem comes down to really two words. There's a difference between being unaware and being aware. So, I certainly do not know everything. There are an endless list of things of which I am, blissfully unaware. When someone raises your awareness and says, hey, that system that you're going to, those doctors, those hospitals, those clinics, this is how they operate. You are now aware that everything that I've just said, you now have the opportunity to be aware of it. The question is, and this is the core of what we all need to do, do you choose, even though you're now aware, to be ignorant of that reality? Now, I pronounce that differently than most people.
Yeah, I like that.
It's not that you're stupid. It's not that you're not, aware. You are aware. But if you go to a doctor's office and you submit yourself to their entrapment, you are being ignorant. That's not an insult. It's not saying you're stupid. Okay, it's not saying you're unintelligent. You're choosing to ignore reality. So if you choose first to go running to the doctor with every little symptom that you might have, if you choose to go in for their yearly checkups and their scans and their mammograms and their, whatever it might be that they're going to do to try to entrap you to buy some of their products and services, who's the fool? Who's the source of the problem? You gotta look in the mirror and say, wait a minute, my health is my responsibility. Ask yourself a question. What have you been doing that you should probably stop doing? And what have you not been doing that you might want to start? The answer is always going to be in that realm. I could go on with example after example. You weren't maybe eating enough beets. You made a change. You got some advice. You ate some beets. The numbers went back to slightly normal. You avoided a life-altering attack on your health by the health system. That is where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, I love this explanation you're providing. It's very clear. And I'm very thankful for that. And as a matter of fact, you reminded me of precisely something I had written in an article I published last November, which I'd love for you guys to check out, called The Furious Five, 5 Responses to an Unthoughtful Assumption. I'm just going to read these first 2 paragraphs quickly because it just reminded me immediately of what you just said, which is, in my campaign to warn people about the harms that have resulted from the mass injection campaign under the rubric of COVID-19, one of the responses that I've come across more than a few times is the statement, quote, well, I've taken my COVID injections and I'm fine. Sometimes they'll add to that by saying, I'm fine and everyone I know who has received them is also fine. When people make the claim that they are fine, I consider this to be a profoundly ignorant thing to say. Please do not misunderstand me. By ignorant, a word that triggers many people, I do not mean stupid. I mean to refer to the root of the word ignorant, which is to ignore. To still believe that COVID injections are not harmful and actually believe they are effective means that a person has ignored several categories of evidence to reach this uninformed conclusion. So totally agree with you about the word ignore. I've always had sort of not always, but as an adult, I've always had a thing about that word ignorant because I find that it's something that really does trigger people. It's almost worse than calling someone stupid, I've noticed. He's ignorant. What do you mean I'm ignorant? People will actually get angry, physically angry, if you call some people ignorant. But at the same time, I feel that, well, we're all mostly ignorant because we all mostly have to ignore a vast world to basically focus on what we're doing to a large extent. So ignorance I find to be a very natural thing and a sort of a misunderstood and a misused word that is very upsetting to people in general.
Well, let me dive into that a little bit. Let me encourage you to adopt my unique pronunciation.
Yeah.
It's quite the conversation starter.
Yeah.
All you have to do is say, ignorant. And I think it takes off the charge, but it starts a conversation.
Yeah.
If I may, let me raise the concept, and this is maybe a way to get at people's subconscious programming and get at their assumptions and their beliefs, because with the scenario that you described with what you had written about people saying, oh, I'm fine, I got my jabs, everybody I know got my jabs, okay, fine. Asking rhetorical questions or asking questions of a factual nature that are quite difficult to answer leads to, I think, potentially worthwhile conversations. So let me put it out to you. It's not meant to be, taken as an attack on anybody. It's meant to be an honest attempt to reach agreement with people, or at least, understanding comprehension. How many people do you believe died and their death was caused by the COVID-19 injections? It's a very simple question that has a numerical answer, but people will avoid answering it. So let me just ask that question, and it's open for discussion. I don't mean to put anybody on the spot. How many people do you believe have died as a result of getting the COVID-19 injections? Worldwide, United States, whatever way you want to discuss it. How many people do you think the jabs have killed?
Me personally?
Yes. It's a hard question.
It's a hard question. I think it's in the tens of millions. I think it's in the tens of millions, and I can't verify that personally. It actually, it's made me raise the question when I saw that the world population supposedly, apparently broke 8 billion after this horrific event. It made me ask the question, which I've actually never heard anyone ask before, which is, what's the margin of error on the world population?
Okay. Now, I'm not going to get off track. I'm going to come back.
I'm sorry, sir. Please finish your thought.
No, it's all good. It's all good. What you will observe is it's an almost unanswerable question.
Right.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. Isn't that like some important data?
Right.
Okay. So then I would follow it up with an even harder question. I mentioned it earlier. You may not, it may have gone flying by. But there's this international agreed-upon nomenclature called the ICD-10 codes, the International Classification of Disease. Okay, it's organized by the WHO, but interestingly enough, the CDC, that many people think that is an abbreviation for the Centers for Disease Control. I refer to it as the Centers for Data Concealment. Okay. They're supposed to be in charge of tracking all of this. And there is an ICD-10 code that your doctor should, or at least the billing, the people who handle the billing and all the paperwork for your doctor should be aware of, which is U12.9. Now, I'm going to venture to guess that nobody in your audience has the foggiest idea why I'm talking about ICD-10 code U12.9. That's the code that's supposed to be entered into your medical records or someone's medical records if the doctor has determined that they're suffering from a COVID-19 vaccine injury. Well, if your doctor and everyone on staff doesn't know that that's the code, and they never enter it into the data, then it appears through the Centers for Data Concealment that there's no problem. But hold on a moment. You go online, you go on TikTok or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or anywhere. There's millions of people with their stories. And the main story that I recently have been trying to get people to pay attention to, I've compiled a world of information about the harms that the jabs have caused, and hopefully people will write this down and pay a visit to it. I did a month's worth of articles, all compiled together, and you can get them at notsafe.and.noteffective.com. notsafe.and.noteffective.com. At the very top of that article, there's an open letter that I wrote on March 1st to President Trump. And in it are 40 photographs of the harm that the jabs have caused. Now, these are not from TikTok or Facebook or social media. These are case studies written up by doctors, published in esteemed medical journals, and they are all available on PubMed. This is evidence of the harm that was caused by the Pfizer and Moderna jabs. Now, there's thousands more, but I collected 40 images and put them in a letter to President Trump. And the reason I did that is, one-page letter with a bunch of pictures. I have hope that somebody will print that letter out and drop it on a table in Mar-a-Lago and go, hey, President Trump, have you seen these? Okay. Now, they're stomach churning, so be aware that this is information that you are now aware exists, but are y'all going to ignore it? Are y'all going to look at it and go, oh, that's horrible, I don't want to talk about that? Okay? Well, it's undeniable. And this is one of the ways I try to operate. I provide evidence. Now, when somebody says, oh, I'm fine and everybody I know is fine, well, bless you. You may not have suffered the consequences immediately. There is a time lag for some of the problems. It takes a while for problems to occur. Or you may be blessed and you may be just fine. I'm so happy for you. Just because you're okay, does that give you the right to deny the harms that other people have clearly documented? Have you read the VAERS reports? Have you read the deaths of, dozens of young children who died almost immediately after the jab, and the reports have been filed and ignored? Have you read on Open VAERS about well over 1,000 women who, on the very same day they got their jab, they lost their unborn child to a miscarriage? And days after the jab, many hundreds more women. What we're dealing with is this weird idea of statistics. Okay? How many people is it okay to kill? What percentage of people is it okay to ignore the suffering that you caused them? And, oh, wait a minute, the jabs don't stop infection, they don't stop transmission, and the longer-term evidence shows very clearly that the more jabs somebody gets, the more likely they are to actually be diagnosed with, respiratory ailment COVID-19 and to suffer immune dysfunction. Wait a minute, these things are not safe and not effective. Well, go to notsafeandnoteffective.com, because what I realized 3 months ago or so, before Thanksgiving, I realized that the evidence is being made to be invisible. If you go on, forget about Google, but, go on some other search engine, DuckDuckGo or Brave or whatever you want to use, you cannot find the truth. It's very well hidden, and people believe what they want to believe. And when you present them with factual evidence to the contrary of their religious belief, they just ignore it. And so what we're dealing with is a type of subliminal, subconscious programming where people do not want to face the horror of, the damage that's been done, or the mistake that they know they made deep down inside, but they don't want to admit even to themselves. They will defend their wrong decision with all kinds of excuses rather than face the fact that they were taken for a ride. And so what we're really dealing with is a psychological, structural, mental issue between people who are willing to face, inconvenient truths and those who are willing to openly challenge their own actions and question their own decisions and look at new information. That's called the scientific method. Well, we don't have very many scientists. We have a lot of people who believe in scientism. Oh, well, everybody says, the 97% consensus is this, therefore that must be true. That's not how science works. That's how rationalization and propaganda and manipulation work. Now, if you can identify when somebody is talking that way, you're probably best to just walk away, because their mind is not open, and the conversation you're going to have with them is most likely going to waste both of your times. You might ask them some questions. How many people do you think have died? How many women lost their babies? How many children were ever going to die from COVID? The rate of death for children was non-existent. How could there be any benefit if there was never going to be any danger? Ask them rhetorical questions. I published an article with 50 questions for President Trump along those lines. If you can't agree on the data, like, okay, how many people died? How many people, reported their injuries to VAERS? How many people were disabled? How many people? You will never get an answer to those questions from people who don't want to face the frightening trauma of, deep down inside, they got taken for a ride, they got bamboozled, and they're ashamed to admit it. How do you deal with that shame? Well, I think it's more important to deal with the vicious harms that people have suffered, either because they, weren't paying attention and they did something that they regret, or they were coerced and manipulated into doing something that they didn't want to do. Where is the compassion for the people who have had their lives destroyed? It's great that you're okay, you selfish bastard.
For now, okay, for now.
Yeah, and excuse my language, but at some point, it's not okay to turn away from other people's suffering and go, it didn't harm me, so to heck with it. Everybody else must be fine. That is such an infantile approach. Good luck dealing with the person who tries to bring that argument. They'll never provide you with any facts or evidence that you could actually have a discussion of. Is it okay to kill 5 people to save 1 million? Or is it okay to kill 1 million to save nobody? Because the jabs don't work. Oh, you want to argue that they are safe and effective? No, they're not. By law, the jabs that people and the jabs that are being inflicted upon 6-month-old infants, 3 jabs for a 6-month-old, are not FDA approved. They are not safe and effective. They are emergency use authorized under the PrEP Act, which gives complete and total immunity from liability from any kind of a lawsuit. And it is not allowable to say that those products are safe and effective. That's not what it is written in the EUA, the emergency use authorization. All they have to say is, it may be effective. Now, I'm not choosing those words randomly. That's the law. And so when the CDC and the FDA and everybody in government and everybody in the media lies and says that the injections that they're giving to babies are safe and effective, they're breaking the law. They're saying something that is not true, and I can document it. This is what the PrEP Act is all about. Now, going forward, I'm going to be working very powerfully to get everyone in the country to learn what the PrEP Act is, what it has done, how it got started, and why it needs to be repealed. Because essentially, back in 2005, if you can rewind, your mind 20 years, that was the year of the Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. And in the attempt to put forth a piece of legislation to get money for the victims in Katrina, they tacked it onto a defense appropriations bill, which got tacked onto an avian flu virus, bioweapons prevention bill. And at the very last minute, under the cover of night, just before Christmas, when it had not been discussed all summer, all autumn, all into, just before the end of the year, they threw in the PrEP Act to give liability protection to the pharmaceutical companies, the doctors, the nurses, the clinics, everybody under the sun. Nobody can be sued for the harms that have been caused because the PrEP Act gives them blanket immunity for prosecution. And so people have been talking about the Joe Biden, preemptive pardons. Well, the PrEP Act gave a preemptive pardon to tens of millions of people who were involved in the COVID scam. And the vast majority of Americans are completely and totally unaware that the reason why we suffered through these last 5 years with remdesivir and COVID, and ventilators and all that sort of stuff, is they could do anything to you, anything at all, and get off the hook, because the PrEP Act makes it impossible to sue any of them. And that's the root of the problem, and you're now aware of it. If you choose to ignore it, that's up to you. But if you want to actually do something about it, my number is 310-619-3055. I'm that serious about raising the awareness of, how did we actually really get into this mess, and how do we get out of it? Well, it starts with repealing that legislation, because if you're going to let the pharmaceutical industry poison you either through, horribly invasive, ventilators, stuck down your throat to stop your breathing for a respiratory ailment, or drugs like remdesivir, remdesivir, or all of the jabs. If we allow a law to stay on the books that gives everyone involved in that industry complete and total protection from any kind of a lawsuit for the harms they cause, they're just going to do it all over again.
Absolutely. Yeah, powerful statement, and great point to really focus in on the PrEP Act and the legal and social significance of that. It's a great point. If you ever want to do an X space focused on that, I would love to facilitate.
I'm at your disposal. Just let me know. And I have put it out there to the universe and God, and asked, many, many times, what can I do? And so I try not to worry about what Doge is doing, or, what the JFK file release is talking about, or, aliens coming down, or whatever it might be. I try to look at it and go, God, just tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. And when the inspiration comes in, and it's like, oh, I can actually do something. I don't worry about what other people do. I don't worry about what politicians do, or people in the media, or whatever. When I wake up in the morning, I go, what can I do?
Absolutely.
And there's always an endless list. It's an exponentially growing list of, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. Or you can choose to do nothing. And that's okay. Everybody has their purpose, their place, their path in life. But if you want to do something, you as an individual are uniquely suited to do the things that you can do. You don't need to do what I'm doing. I don't need to do what you're doing. You do you, but do it with purpose. Do it with, hey, I just became aware of something, and I don't want to ignore it. I want to do something about it. Everybody can do something in every little piece. Every butterfly flapping their wings, moves the world a little bit. You got to live with yourself at the end of life, when you meet your maker and do your life review, could you have done more? Of course, we all can. But, are you going to feel guilty that you ignored the suffering of other people for your own selfish, take the easy way out? Or are you going to go, man, I tried my hardest and I failed, I succeeded, whatever it may be. But damn it, I tried. You'll be happier with yourself if you, have that review at the end of life than sitting back and going, I didn't care about anybody. I only cared about myself.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, you can call James Roguski. He's given you his phone number, but before you call his 310 number, which of course, don't call that right now. We are live on the air. You can call and talk to him now. We only have a few minutes. I hope we can maybe hear from one caller, but of course the number.
And text messaging is always a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the number here is 888-874-4888, 888-874-4888. You should have that committed to memory. You should have that on speed dial by now. But if you'd like to speak to James Roguski, please call right now because we only have a few minutes left. But in the meantime, I want to first of all thank CeCe Blakeman again for that touching song. I mean, I'm so honored that she wrote all those lyrics and
it was beautiful.
Recognized my efforts, and it's really inspiring. I'm an artist, a musician as well, and it reminded me of the power of what art can do because it really did put some wind beneath my wings and has sort of inspired me this morning for some communication.
It's kind of what I was saying. I mean, she did what she is best suited to do.
Right. Exactly true, and it means a lot. I also want to say, please support my Substack. I just broke 2,000 subscribers, which is a big honor, but help me burst through to 3,000 and beyond. If you listen to this program and you haven't subscribed yet, please just go ahead and do so. That's sort of where I get to really present my thoughts in an organized manner. And if you appreciate anything that's written there, please let me know. If you have a problem with anything I've written there, please let me know. We can talk about it. But I think there's something to be said for taking the time to organize your thoughts in a world where people are being pre-programmed and hesitant to share their own individual perspectives. Also, James Roguski, are you on Substack as well?
I am. The hard part is spelling my name, so it's jamesroguski.substack.com, JamesRoguski.substack.com. I would encourage people to go to notsafe.and.noteffective.com. It actually brings you right into my Substack where I wrote a series of 27 articles, and you can get them all in one fell swoop right there. And if you get confused or whatever, can't spell my name, send me a text message, and we'll communicate that way.
Exactly. So very accessible. Listen, folks, I don't want to go into a whole rant here because we do have Muhammad on the line, but I will just say something that I've harped on. When people put forth an extra effort and provide real content that can educate people, that can open people's eyes, let's rally around those people. So not safe and not effective, is the word "and" in there?
Yes, not safe and not effective.
So let's spread the word.
I just got tired of people, I got tired of hearing safe and effective.
Yeah, it's such a lie.
It's not safe and not effective.
Such a farce. Well, we have Muhammad on the line, first of all. So how are you, Brother Muhammad? We actually have another caller behind you, if it's possible to sneak in too, but possibly not. So go ahead, Muhammad. How are you?
Okay, I'm going to be real quick about it. I hope I'm going well, Jeremiah. Just going back to the vaccines that the people got, the statistics was between 20 and 21, death rates went up by 20%. And the statistics came from the insurance companies and the undertakers. Mm-hmm. That's all I had to say for today.
Yeah, great point. The work of Ed Dowd highlights that. Yep. And, if the death rate goes up 20% and approximately 1% of the population dies every year, notice that's basically raising the number from 1.0 to 1.2. So it's a very significant increase, but a small enough increase to hide under the radar for those who aren't paying attention. Let's go quickly to Tom in West New York, but we got to make this quick. Tom, can you hit us in like 20 seconds?
Yeah, just wanted to let the gentleman know that I've been writing a response to the Spartacus League, who is telling me that millions of people of working people, they're supposed to be pro-working class, they took the shots and they're doing just fine. So I'm very grateful that you've made this website available. I'm definitely going to use it in my latest response to these sheepies.
Well, thank you, Tom. That's outstanding.
And let me invite you to reach out to me if you ever want to discuss it in great detail. Statistics are tricky, okay? If 0.1% of people are harmed by something, sounds insignificant. But when you multiply that times 8 billion, a lot of people have been harmed. You might not know them personally, but somebody was their mother, their father, their daughter, their child, their friend. To be wrapped up in the way statistics are manipulated, it takes away the humanity of the reality. So if you read the letter to Donald Trump and look at the images, it shows, visually the harm. That's right at the top of notsafeandnoteffective.com. Statistics mess with your head and people make things sound like it's okay. It's not okay for anyone to have been harmed without an acknowledgement of what actually happened to them.
That's a great statement to end our program on. I want to thank you, James Roguski, for being here, and thank you for all that you do. I think you're a powerful voice in this struggle for human dignity. And everyone, really quick, we had an incredible 528 frequency sound healing event recently, and listeners to this program came from New Jersey, from Connecticut, and really made it a special event. So we're going to do another one of those events at the same location on Sunday, April 27th. Please save that date, because we're really trying to make that a place where folks can meet face to face and inspire each other and get connected in the real world. So April 27th at Rock Mill Fitness, the next 528 frequency jam. And thank you all for listening. Thank you, James Roguski. Thanks again to CeCe Blakeman for that beautiful song. And everyone, stay strong, keep fighting the good fight, and join the Stop the Shots community on X. Take care, everyone. Peace.
And then you know you're alive, and you don't have to be afraid of anything, 'cause you